Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of April 11th, 2024. As chair of the committee, I recognize that we have a quorum, and I call this meeting to order. The next item on our agenda after calling this meeting to order is approving the minutes of February 29th, 2024. Committee members, has everyone had a chance to go through the minutes? Are there any comments or questions? If not, may I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We'll go to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the town manager's report.
Nothing really to report, just real quick. All in front of you have a new style town trash bag that we'd like you to try out. There's a survey attached to that, which we're in an effort to improve our customer service. We're trying out a new style bag, and we have about 1,000 of those we're passing out to residents. So we have some here for the audience member. You can also pick them up here in Town Hall at the manager's office or DPW or over at the senior center. And then upcoming events will have them also, but we'd really appreciate it if people would try these out. There's a QR code on there. Give us a survey, give us a feedback, and help us make a decision if we're going to stick with this style bag or the current bag that we have now, and hoping to make that change in July. So these bags are thicker than what you have now, and regardless of what style we go to in July, it'll be the same thickness as these. So feedback would be appreciated. Thanks.
I apologize. Did you say the same price?
The bags will be the same price.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bollinger? Thank you, sir. We shall now move to the main item of today's meeting, which is the public hearing for the annual town meeting warrant. Prior to opening the meeting, I just want to share the process that we will be following tonight. The articles that will be presented by the main person, the main presenter, the point of contact. I ask the committee members to hold any questions to after the completion of the presentation in the interest of time and the number of articles that we have. After the presenter is complete, I will open it up to questions from the committee, followed by the public. Also, once again, in the interest of time, I ask members of the public to limit to 1 to 2 minutes and direct it to the article under discussion. If there are no comments from the committee, I will ask you for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All against, please say nay. And the motion passes unanimously. So we shall proceed proceed according to the order that was published. We start with article number 32, which is a citizen's petition. I call upon Robert Ryan and Krista Dupre to please come up and present.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
My name's Krista Dupre.
Robert Ryan, 8 Colonial Drive.
We concerned citizen, as well as there were others on this citizen petition, have come forward regarding the Shrewsbury Town Meeting warrant Article 32. We're asking town meeting members to rezone the listed parcels in the article from limited industrial to commercial business. Currently, the parcels of land listed in the warrant article are currently zoned limited industrial. Please note these parcels of land had been zoned commercial business for many years till town meeting on August 8th, 2020. As concerned citizens, we have learned more about the area that was rezoned from commercial business to limited industrial back in the August of 2020. The concerns of this area, including having limited industrial zoning in the Aquifer Overlay District and a budding residential B2 and rural B zoning districts. Do you have the slides that were sent in?
Yes, we do.
Do you want the zoning, the map first? Which map?
Maybe the Aquifer one, just to give a point of reference. Here we go. That's yours right there.
So, on the slide, one of the slides you have, not the one up here, one in your packet, is a description of the overlay district, and for reference, the aquifer overlay district is described according to the town bylaws. The Aquifer Protection Overlay District is intended to protect health and safety by minimizing, I know you guys know this, but I think for the public, minimizing contamination of shallow, superficial aquifers and preserving and protecting existing and potential sources of drinking water. It's clear, and I'm not going to have you, Alex, put up the zoning map, but on either side of the limited industrial area is residential B2 and rural B. And those were intended for residential, single-family detached homes, open space, conservation, basically non-commercial uses. And so one of our issues is this limited industrial is putting a major commercial use in between two residential areas. Primary use of a limited industrial, which is what currently is zoned as of the August 8th, 2020 town meeting, is initially for research and development. At the very end of proposed uses is warehousing. So it's not, clearly whoever designed the bylaw was not expecting warehousing to be the primary use of limited industrial. Those are more appropriate for Route 20. For reference, the commercial business district is intended to provide goods and services for transients or tourists and non-consumer goods and services. So primarily, and we don't need to read the warrant article, do we? Or do you want us to? No? Okay. I don't know if you, for public, if you wanted it read.
Can you, why don't we do that? Let's read it.
Okay, so for the public, do you want to read it or you want me to read it?
You can read it.
Okay. So the article is to see, Article 32 is to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning map of the town of Shrewsbury by changing the zoning designation of the following parcels from the limited industrial zoning to commercial business zoning. I think we could just say there's a number of assessors parcels listed, and after that, it says, as shown on the exhibits labeled existing zoning map and proposed zoning map. I don't know if you have those, Alex. I don't know that we need to. I don't know if the board wants to see them, but you have. I think you have the maps in your.
We do have the maps.
Materials, so I don't know that we need to show them. And you have a submission. We're not going to read it all, but basically there's a huge list of potential uses for commercial business zoning. So primary point being that if 2/3 of town meeting vote to approve Article 32 and revert the zoning to commercial, there are many potential uses for that property. It's not making it non-usable. Okay, so
Yep. So in addition, by having the parcels zoned for commercial business, which had previously been zoned like this for many years, this offers much added protection to the Aquifer Overlay District, which was adopted in March 23rd, 2005. There was also additional information regarding the aquifer, but I could not fully confirm that. There was an updated from 1998, I think, to the 2005. As you know, Shrewsbury's town aquifer provides town water across Shrewsbury. This area is also, that we're looking at today, is in Zone 2, which is the aquifer recharge area. We want to protect the town of Shrewsbury's water wellhead and the aquifer zones 1 and 2 in this area. Lastly, we believe by rezoning to commercial business is more in line with Shrewsbury's climate action and resiliency plan. This zoning will play a part in a role in Shrewsbury's collective action for a sustainable future, preserving vibrant natural resources, sustainable transportation and land use, and smart waste and water management. Thank you to the town manager, manager's office, and staff for their assistance. Thank you, Finance Committee, for listening, and the public.
Prior to opening it to any questions from the committee, Mr. Bollinger, I understand you have something you would like to say.
Yep, sure. So thank you. So it just, as relates to this article, I just wanted to make it important that I remind the Finance Committee of the open and full deliberative process that put the current zoning in place. The current zoning was purposely put in place to enable development like what is currently before the planning board. We know that GFI Partners, who is the property owner, was working with town staff prior to 2020 regarding these parcels in question. Specific items including a conservation restriction and granting an easement to the town around its wellheads for proper protection and also proper protection of the aquifer. In March of 2020, in a letter to the Select Board from GFI Partners Council, a meeting was requested to discuss rezoning the parcels outlined from commercial business to limited industrial. This was presented and discussed at public Select Board meetings in March and April of 2020. It was also presented and discussed at hearings hosted by the Finance Committee at their monthly meetings from May through August of 2020, and also the same period of time for Planning Board in meetings from May to August of 2020. On July 15th, 2020, a direct mailed letter from GFI Partners was sent to all town meeting members. It outlined the zoning change and all of the potential uses that are allowed in the limited industrial zones. Leading up to the August 8th town meeting, which you may remember was under the big top in front of Oak, town meeting members were mailed their packets and received a letter from the manager dated July 28th, 2020, that included information on all of the articles, plus a link to pre-recorded presentations for the warrant articles. Town meeting was on August 8th, 2020, and in front of Oak Middle School, under the tent, like I said. There were 155 town meeting members present. Article 36 lasted about 12 minutes on the floor. It included a presentation and questions from town meeting members and responses from the town manager, assistant town manager, and GFI Partners. It required a 2/3 majority vote, and although the video does not show the entire crowd, there were only a handful of members opposed, as you could see them raise their colored cards in the video. The moderator nor anyone in attendance questioned the vote, and it passed with required supermajority. Further, at the annual town meeting in May of 2022, Article 35 included additional amendments to the limited industrial zoning by increasing the total building height permissible through special permit and also allowing loading and unloading at the front of buildings, also by special permit, to reduce the impact to neighbors in some of these limited industrial areas. Like the other zoning amendments, these changes were discussed in public hearings at Select Board and Finance Committee during their March, and April, and May meetings, and Planning Board during their same March, April, and May meetings prior to the annual town meeting beginning in March of 2022. The article was discussed on the floor for that meeting for about 18 minutes. Many questions were asked on the floor, including what type of uses are allowed in limited industrial zones, warehouses being one of them listed in the response by the town planner. The moderator nor anyone in attendance questioned the vote as it passed with the required supermajority. Given this thorough process, there are real implications to changing zoning because certain individuals do not like a particular use that is currently being pursued by a developer. That is not a judgment on the proposed project. It is concern about the overall development environment in the town of Shrewsbury. In a community where we continue to encourage commercial development to offset the financial tax burden on our residents, we are concerned that overturning zoning by changing a vote by the community's legislative body only a few years ago would be detrimental to future economic development. This would increase uncertainty in an already volatile industry for landowners and developers looking to invest in Shrewsbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bollinger. I now open it to the committee. Are there any
Can I
questions?
respond to that or no?
Yes, you're right. You
All
can-
right, I was a town meeting member, August 8th, 2020. I was not in the tent because the moderator had appointed me as deputy moderator to sit in the school. I've talked to many people who were at that meeting. None of us knew warehouses, through all these hearings, would be there. We all focused on the research and development. By changing it to commercial general does not tell people, businesses not to develop in Shrewsbury. There are many, in your packet you have, there are many options of commercial development available on that property.
Mr. Bollinger, do you want to say anything else? Any other comment from you or Ms. Dupre?
And I will just add, this is not like the repeal Beal vote that was ruled out of order by town council and town moderator. I have confirmed that with the town manager. I have confirmed that with the Assistant Attorney General for Municipal. I've confirmed that with many development attorneys. This is a fully permissible citizens petition article, and I've confirmed something today with the planning board I'm not getting into, but if a 2/3 vote, this will be an effective zoning change in Shrewsbury for this parcel.
Mr. Bollinger.
I'd like to hear what you confirm with the
I'm
planning board.
sorry, Mr. Bollinger
Um,
had related that.
We'd just like to say that, so the town has no intention whatsoever to move this article out of order. It's fully intended to go through town meeting. We have no.
There is a, Mr. O'Connell, right? O'Connor.
O'Connell.
I've known him for years, I get his name wrong. So an issue was raised yesterday by a development attorney of zoning with the term as of right. And it's particularly an issue right now in the whole MBTA zoning issue as of right, as to what can be built. And the position this pro-development attorney, friend of mine, told me was that as of right would mean that a subsequent zoning change would not impact the current proposed development. But under the law for Massachusetts, as of right means there cannot be any required special permits, variances, waivers, zoning amendments. My question last night to the head of economic development and to Louise, whatever her position is, assistant planner, I think, was whether or not there were any special permits required. And she confirmed, yes, today that a special permit is required, so that takes this out of the as of right definition, meaning that the developer can't say, well, we relied on the zoning when we, well, people have to understand about this different from Beal. The developer is the one who bought the land before the town vote. The developer is the one who brought the zoning change to the town. So the developer should be aware changes can be made if they take 4 years to develop the property. So.
I understand that, and thank you for clarifying that, Bob. Why now are we questioning it? As you said, 4 years to get here. I think I've been on 2 finance committee meetings at Warrants talking about this.
I only became aware of it at the planning board meeting a month or so ago, and I realized 500 trucks a day were going to go by my house.
So 500 trucks going by your house is what brought you to this conclusion?
No, then I started looking into the whole thing, concerns about the aquifer, the stormwater, the 1,100 trucks a day going there, 180 bays, potential fuel leakage, all those issues.
Well, when we talk about the other commercial building things, do you think you had manufacturing in there? Or what were the other ones in there you're talking about?
I'm just going to make sure it's correct. Just in 1 second or so. Yeah.
Under commercial business or limited industrial?
Commercial business.
So, under commercial business, there's uses including agricultural, including vet hospitals, stables, kennels, used for commercial purposes. There could be recreation.
Okay. Agricultural, we're talking runoff or waste. There's a lot of agricultural stuff. Right, the farm, they're spraying. You could get a lot of things there that could be even worse for the aquifer.
So that also goes back to the protections of the aquifer overlay district, because that would most likely require a special
Right,
permit
which means
when-
farming is not part of that.
when they build.
Right.
So
I'm just
meaning
saying,
that's-
already we're taking farming out.
this is just a general statement of commercial industrial.
Okay.
Of that definition, for example.
So there is an aquifer protection in place that the warehouses will have to follow. Am I correct, or am I
Well,
wrong in that
yes.
assumption? So the same protection is there right now if the warehouses go up.
Correct.
What I'm getting at,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to be hostile, I'm not trying to
No,
be.
no,
is
no.
I've been in this town for 30 years.
Yep.
We've never cared about, until probably the last 10, about building houses everywhere, quarter-acre lots, et cetera. We started saying we want commercial building. 2 major commercial projects, if not more, have been questioned. So I do feel we're becoming an anti-commercial town, and I think that's gonna hurt us. So I was sat in Finance Committee on 2 of the votes, and I fully support the warehouses. The raising of the height made them Class A versus Class B, which is a much higher tax producer for us. And, you know, there are gonna be trucks going up and down that road, and they're not going down Colonial. I do wanna confirm that, right? They're not going down Colonial, they're going down 140, a state highway that can have as many trucks as they want, that's taken care of by the state. So again, I ask, why now? Why are we trying to stop development, commercial development, that won't bring in children, that will bring in businesses, it will bring in traffic, yes, but traffic also can stop and purchase things at local stores or whatever, restaurants, et cetera.
Personally, the more I've learned about it, because I'm not a legal abutter,
Yeah.
as I've learned about the project in this process, back even as the community meeting, which was on December 19th, 2023. That's really when I first heard, because I'm not a legal abutter. I miss it by 20 feet, for example. So there are other uses of going back to the commercial business. Yes, I was stating like the first one on the general list. And I understand that the concern of the types of builds, meaning obviously not putting additional stress on infrastructure, especially the schools, which I understand. But the more I have learned, and there's other people here that I have learned from, for example, that they've actually been paying attention to the aquifer, and I've learned quite a bit from them, and they've been paying attention probably long before I even moved to town. So it was refreshing to actually learn from people and learn all the risks, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a learning process for all of us of really understanding the aquifer. And there are protections no matter what would have been built if it was the same zoning as to this particular zoning. We just felt this particular zoning was a bit more, I say risky, and I'm not saying there isn't, things aren't being followed, but we felt moving back to the commercial business would be beneficial for the aquifer and zone.
So do we have any expert opinions to back that up, that claim? Any data that could say that moving to commercial would present less risk to, as part of your petition?
I think it would depend upon the build, in regards to that, but we can talk to potentially a hydrogeologist, who actually studies the water, which I've been reading about, and see what their expert opinion would be.
And Dennis, to answer your question as to why the last minute option on the zoning change, I got that idea from the town of Milton reversing their vote to approve the MBTA and decided to challenge the state. And, I mean, this development from one side or another will bring legal action. So it seemed the easiest thing to do was to change the zoning and let the developer sue us.
Where would the other legal action be if we didn't?
The residents, the abutters, they have the right to challenge any environmental rulings, any aquifer protections, make sure they're legit. I mean, I've already told the planning board on record, I believe GFI is lying to the town. Their traffic engineer had very detailed records as to how many trucks a day would be traveling. He even referenced trucks coming from Canada. Well, if you have an unknown tenant and you're building on spec, how do you know trucks are coming from Canada, 495, 290, 140? I said that to the planning board. You know, something doesn't smell right here. These guys know who they're building for. I know a guy who was a warehousing distribution analyst, and he said in the current environment, nobody is building a warehouse on spec, that they have known tenants, but they are not telling us who they are. Why is the question. I asked the planning board to ask them, why won't they tell us who it is?
I think we have a member from GFI here today, so we can ask that person.
No, I don't think we do.
We don't? Okay.
We do not.
Oh, we have asked. They don't know. It's all spec.
Sometimes they don't, the developer never reveals its of the secrecy of from the company, so that's built in typically.
I understand that, but they have said, they aren't saying we can't, they're saying we don't know. I understand what you're saying, I'm an attorney, I know that, I know there's restrictions, they're just saying we don't know.
Any other, yes, Rajesh?
I just want to clarify one quick thing, I think maybe following up on Dennis' comments. So the concern is aquifer, right?
Excuse me?
So the concern here is the aquifers, and then, but
And the
it looks,
track.
sorry?
Well, I think there's more concerns than aquifer. I think at the planning board meeting the other night, people raised issues about the idling of trucks and the pollution and the noise. All that was being discussed the other night also, and the planning board, you probably know, has asked them to bring back both their environmental engineer and their traffic engineer to the next meeting. To further, Motor Paulo raised some concerns about the timing of the noise study, and he wanted them to review that.
So, but you're not in.
So it's aquifer plus other environmental issues. It's
Okay, so it's
wetlands,
it's not just tied to the aquifer.
no, it's not 100% an aquifer issue, no.
Yeah, because when I'm looking at the other opportunities, I think pretty much in that sphere, one way or the other, they have the similar impact.
Well, question that was asked the other night by members in the public to the GFI, the planning board, was, who's gonna enforce the 5-minute idling time? Will there be repairs for the trucks made on the property? The town representative said, well, that's not supposed to happen. The question was, well, who's stopping that? They said there was a big discussion about the noise, and Mo raised a question about what they were using as their standard, and kind of asked them to revisit that issue, I think, if I understood them correctly.
So with the idle, I'm just here trying to understand. So idling, there's a possibility to impose, right? So like there's.
So idling a vehicle, any vehicle, truck, car, whatever, for more than 5 minutes is, well, I'm not sure if illegal is the right word, illegal under Mass General Law.
Mhm.
So the police have powers to ticket vehicles or trucks for that.
Quick question, what is the assessed value of the property?
Is it like 5 million something right now?
So I don't know what the current assessed value is, we can get that for you though.
I think I read they bought it for like 7.5, and it's currently assessed at 5.5 maybe.
Thank you.
That was from town records.
I just want to go back to what you said earlier. So we don't know who the tenant is, right? But you think that they do. I guess I'm just curious if you could elaborate.
The reason we think they must know is when the guy references trucks coming from Canada,
Oh, I understand what you said.
it's like, how do you know they're coming from Canada if you don't know who the tenant is?
I'm just unclear on, regardless of who the tenant is, how does that change anything? Like, is there a certain tenant?
Well, I
that-
think it would tell us what is the nature of the warehouse. We don't, they're looking for 500 employee parking spaces. They're looking for 180 truck bays, 1,100 trucks a day, 24/7. They said most of the, I'm trying to remember, I think they said most of the traffic was between 9 and 4 from their transportation expert. So one of our concerns is, well, who is the tenant? If you get that much, if you have 500 cars for employees, and they're talking about bike lanes, we're just concerned what is going in there. It's not Amazon. Amazon has an empty building at Greendale Mall. What is coming in? That's one of the concerns.
Okay.
We just don't know what's coming in.
So could you explain why don't we know? I didn't follow
They
that.
haven't told us.
So isn't that something that the town should be aware of?
So the town's understanding with these is they are building these buildings on spec, much like there were the buildings that were built at Centec North, who were also built on spec. there were no, as you recall, there were no tenants in those buildings for a while.
I see.
So they have not given us any, the only indication they have given about any tenant is that it will not be a last mile type of warehouse. But they don't have any tenant
Are,
on record right now.
are they under obligation to tell us who the tenant is
Nope.
beforehand? It's
Nope.
private.
It's private, they're a landlord, their intention is to continue owning the space. We will learn who the tenant is when they, go through the build-out process for that tenant, because that'll be a separate, building permit from the actual building. But at this time, we don't know.
And have they talked about when they'd be doing that build out?
No, because they don't have a tenant.
Okay.
So,
well,
so,
that-
so they have,
well, the point is, if
they-
they had
they have
asked,
a-
there would be more to
we have,
Bob's thing
they
that
have,
they have a
a
tenant.
rough construction schedule for the buildings.
Yep.
But, not for any tenant.
And what's the scheduling for the buildings? Is it gonna be,
I think depending on permitting, I would expect that they would start construction in the spring.
the spring?
Spring of
Spring of
25,
25.
I apologize. Yep, spring of 25.
And I'll just add, when the whole noise issue came up, they have 180 truck bays. Their study was based on 4 trucks backing up. And we all said, you got 180 truck bays, only 4 trucks at a time are gonna back up? Is that realistic? That was their noise study, was estimating 4 trucks with 180 bays. So, I mean, there's a whole smell test thing here. It's like, does it really make sense?
And part of the process through permitting, when they're designing buildings like this, they have to go through the traffic study and the entire process based on what may be the most extensive use of that property. So the building, if the building is designed to have 100+ truck bays, they are large enough to manage that type of a business. That's how they have to do their study. That is typical for any comprehensive planning process. For example, if you look at 440 Hartford Turnpike, that went through planning process based on having 30 truck bays. They now have a tenant. They went back to planning board for de minimis for changes. They reduced their truck bays to 3, and they reduced the building. So we would expect if changes like that were made, they would come back to planning board to make those changes.
I have a question. I'm assuming we have some sort of noise ordinance in town already that would cover this, especially for like the later hours and things like that, right?
We do, and that's part of the noise study to make sure that they meet those pieces. And then there are DEP regulations on noise for properties like this.
So, Mr. Bollinger, if we do, like, if this zoning change was to happen, besides our reputation, what are the other losses, potential legal or whatever, to the town?
I can't necessarily speak to legal losses.
We're having trouble hearing him. Is anyone? How many people are having a problem?
I
Could you get up
apologize.
and maybe, or turn around? or
Maybe go to the mic, Mr. Bollinger.
Sure, we have a mic. I can speak louder, I apologize. So as far as legal, I can't speak to that. I'm not an attorney.
You may want to just turn towards the audience, because I think
I can't speak to any legal issues that come back onto town on this parcel, on this zoning change. I guess the most impactful thing is there could be a potential for loss of development. Other than that, I can't speak to any of that.
Loss of development, but this is land we've already sold to them, or we leased?
We never owned it. This is
Private.
private property, private sale. We don't own or control the property.
Which means a 40B can be there.
Just have one quick comment on this handout. Is this something you're gonna hand out at town meeting?
Which handout are you referring
The
to?
first one, Article 32.
That I was told, is gonna be in the packet for town meeting.
the quality of it is terrible. You
That
can't-
came from the town, that came from
Right.
the developer.
Is there anything we can do about it to make it a little more descriptive?
I second that. It's hard to read.
That came from the town manager directly.
Because the average town meeting member is gonna look at this and is not gonna have any real idea on there.
That was the map the town manager asked me to use.
Yeah. Just following up on Keith, if we did vote for this particular article, the developer would come back and sue the town within 90 days.
I think they would first technically go to because the Attorney General has to rule on zoning changes, you probably know. So I think they would first go to the Attorney General to try to challenge the allowance of the vote.
We've had cases in town before where you've tried to upset the zoning and the developers just told right off, they're gonna sue.
I know, I was involved against Mark Donahue about 20 years ago on a development in Wallaston on the border of Columbia. And we mostly won that one, so.
Any other questions from the committee?
I just have one,
Yeah.
just for my own clarification. So would it be fair to ask, do you have, what are your top two concerns out of this? I've heard aquifer, I've heard size, noise. Is it all of the above? Are they all equal, or is aquifer your number one priority when it comes to potential development?
Sure. Again, this had been zoned commercial business for,
Right.
I couldn't find that real data long before my time, and I'm a short timer here, just over 15, 16 years. So it's always been zoned that. And so there is potential. For example, in this particular developer obviously wanted a different type of zoning, and obviously that's what came forward. But in learning about the aquifer, that's when we all realized, oh my goodness. As well as learning other things along in this process. For example, there is something called environmental justice, and there is a part of Shrewsbury, and actually if you can Google it up, it's a state website. All of that area, and actually all around Shrewsbury, is also environmental justice. So the state looks at impact of builds for environmental justice communities. I don't want that to be the main
I
talking
understand.
point here. But going back to commercial development, again, it's still development. It may not be what they intended it to be, but it's not as if there's no development.
Okay.
There is still a chance of development, as well as protecting that aquifer, as well as the wetlands.
Can I stop you there? Can I ask a
Sure.
follow-up?
Please.
Just, not to belabor the point, just
That's okay.
did you learn something on the aquifer during this research that's causing you a lot? You've hit it many times in your presentation. I'm just curious.
Well-
Is there something there specific that, because Mr. Bollinger had mentioned, they're gonna have to follow all their rules and regs to make sure they don't violate that.
Sure.
Is there something you're seeing that you could cite or you've stumbled upon?
It's just the overall type of what is currently proposed,
Okay.
and that is what is concerning.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily want to pinpoint exactly that, meaning as I learned about aquifers, they can fail.
Sure.
And once they're contaminated, then they really can't be used, and that's the only source of our town water.
Okay.
And we had a great conversation today, actually, learning from each other. Great conversation today. So of learning more and more, and we feel this is a very interesting part of town that doesn't get looked at a lot. And it has, for example, this section of town, and I say that very loosely, has been brought up to protect this area in the master plan, both in 2001 and the most recent of 2016. And that to preserve this area and have it for passive and active recreation, as well as protections for the aquifer and the town drinking water. So it's not as if it was, yes, that's what came in or what is being proposed by the builder. It was learning and realizing this actually has been on the minds of the town for many years.
Okay.
And obviously the land was owned by someone else and there just wasn't a lot to do until it went up for sale. If that makes sense.
There was
Does,
supposed to
thank
be there was supposed to be a Conservation Commission presentation a few weeks ago, and for some reason it got pushed off till April 16th. A couple weeks ago, there was a tour by the developer with, I think it was 2 planning board members, was it?
2 planning
And 2
planning.
conservation, which if they went to 3, it would have been a public meeting. So everybody wisely kept it to 2 each. So the public was not involved in that tour of the site. So
Do we know the
public
outcome?
can't walk on to the site, it's private property.
Do we know the outcome of that meeting?
We do not. It was not discussed at the last planning board meeting. The site visit was not discussed. My understanding, it may be coming up at the next Conservation Commission meeting, and then eventually at the next planning board meeting, the site visit that was done.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question? I guess to the town staff. So the aquifer overlay, do we have confidence in how that regulation is written currently, regardless of what is developed, right? Will that make sure that regardless of what is developed, we have confidence in the protections that we have in place and the process that goes through Conservation and Planning Board?
Yes, we do. Between the aquifer overlay and DEP regulations, there are a lot of regulations that, no matter what is developed there, whether it's. Sorry, so yes, we have a lot of confidence in that, in our overlay district. And also DEP has control also that, and regulations that have to be followed. So regardless of what the development is there, whether it's warehousing, housing, or any other type of commercial business, they all have to follow the same rules. And it is highly regulated. There are many things that they're not allowed to have on that property.
Thank you.
Actually, a follow-up for the town. Previously, it was a sand and gravel company for, I don't know how many years. Do we have an idea of how many trucks were coming in and out of there every day, and the noise, et cetera? I lived next to a sand and gravel growing up, so I do know there's a lot of trucks, there's a lot of dirt that gets moved off, and there's a lot of noise. So
Yeah, I don't know if we have that data, but we could certainly take a look and see if it exists.
yeah, so I'd be interested to see just how much more it is. I understand the concerns. The 4 trucks backing up at the same time, with that many trucks there, they're probably gonna limit the number of trucks that can be in motion at the same time in order to prevent. I don't know if you've ever been a big warehouse or, if you've gone up to the Rand Whitney thing and seen what they do. They have pretty strict requirements on how they move trucks around because, those are expensive trucks. Maybe not for our safety, but for their own bottom line. So it would be nice if we could get that information. My concern, and it's from the Finance Committee, is we've been trying for years to change the makeup of our, tax revenue, to bring up that commercial base. And every time we try to do that, we come up with something and then we try to kill it. And at some point, no one's gonna wanna build here, because why do you wanna spend all your time and your own lawyers' money trying to get something done and fight every tooth and nail? So I wanna take all this in, but I'm not sure, I just wanna override something we voted on twice. In essence, we voted on it twice. We did the first zoning change to make it limited, and the second zoning change to increase the height. So there was 2 votes since 2020. So this should have been known by at least all the town meeting members, but the town should have known because it gets put on the press after every town meeting, especially the articles that are controversial get brought up. So I question why now are we trying to
I
stop?
said 8/8/2020, most of the town meeting thought it was research and development.
It was limited industrial, and we couldn't get research and development in other parts of the town at the time. We had Centec Boulevard empty for how long? But we thought that was gonna be research and development. One of the reasons I think the limited zoning went in is because we wanted to actually finally get some commercial over there.
Yes, and we did discuss a lot about warehousing.
Yeah.
I remember
In
that, that
2020
time.
and
2020, yeah.
2022, we definitely discussed warehousing significantly.
Just to go, if I may, just to
Yep.
go back to the sand and gravel, that is a current operation actually owned by the current owners of this property. And they currently do have normal, I say normal operating hours. With the current zoning, it could go to 24/7 operation. That's also part of the limited industrial zoning. And that's why we bring up the type of residents that are on all sides, even though in commercial business, there are plenty of opportunities to have other types of businesses, is what I'm trying to get.
But you could also, because commercial business, does that prohibit 24/7?
I am unsure that would have.
Because Digital, when they were up on South Street, they were 24/7 at times, manufacturing. And that was commercial zone, I believe. So I don't know if that would actually remove
I don't know.
24/7.
I haven't heard, but they haven't said
But
no
that's
to 24/7.
That's a very good point. I think we should find out about that before Finance Committee makes a decision on this. That
Understandable.
would be something that would be interesting to find out, but.
And in general, the trucks are less. However, they've peaked and valleyed over the years, again, in my short time of being here for different projects. And they are still busy. They do still operate. I currently can hear backup beepers, even though I'm beyond the 300 feet, for example. But again, going back to the protections of the aquifer, going back to the master plan, we are for some type of development, absolutely. And I know the town wants development as well. So coming back to the commercial business, we still think there could be opportunity for some type of development by going back and protecting the aquifer. Again, learning all about it, as well as environmental justice, because there's many parts of town that do actually fall even under environmental justice.
Are there any other questions on this?
Just the environmental justice, I'll admit, I'm not fully familiar with that, but from what you're saying, it sounds like anything the developer tries to put in, they will be involved in that to make sure that it's environmentally safe.
A resident actually is way more understanding of the environmental justice, but it's something on the website to understand. It has to do with income, languages, ethnicity, and where these types of, it's protections to the public is basically what environmental justice is in these different categories.
It partly goes to that whole issue of the pollution, and if you've got 1,100 trucks a day going in and out, part of the environmental justice is basically trying to look at and reduce the number of the industries that people don't like in my backyard and stick them in the low-income areas. And the environmental justice basically tries to say, no,
Right.
Let's not stick 1,100 trucks a day spewing fumes. To get to you made the comment about they manage the truckload. One of the residents at the last planning board, the sound meeting, raised the issue. I haven't been there, but apparently there's a huge pile of dirt. And he said, did you take into account how that's impacting the sound on his house? And what got a little scary is they said, well, we did a virtual analysis. And it's like, well, shouldn't you be doing, and the town manager can speak, but shouldn't you be doing an actual analysis? They said they did a virtual analysis to remove the dirt pile. And it was kind of like, well, that's not real. That you can put any parameters you want in your virtual analysis.
Yep.
That was one of my concerns.
Now, if they was too much noise, would they be required to put barriers in?
So based on their sound study, the project will be including some sound barriers.
But if based on everything they tell us, if this goes in and it's still too loud, do we have the ability to go back and say you are still over, your sound level is too high?
So the planning board decision, there are options to require reviews after post-occupancy. For example, there is post-occupancy traffic reviews. The planning board could also impose other items that may be related to sound or other things.
My understanding for the sound is a self-reporting by the occupant. So you're going on their word of self-reporting themselves for a violation.
Right, but also for,
Right.
well, at least for the traffic reporting, I can say, like, there are specific studies that they're supposed to do.
Yes, absolutely,
Within that reporting.
for
So-
traffic, but if they go beyond the sound of 10 decibels, then they're supposed to be self-reporting. Yes. Again, and a lot of this, as many things in town, it comes down to enforcement. Many things. Many things. It could be a neighbor not cutting their grass, because I know that's a bylaw in town, not having it cut, to someone not picking up their trash, whatever it may be. It comes down to self-reporting.
So I have one quick question. It goes for both town members and also for you. So we have similar structures around us, right? The warehouses, maybe of the different sizes and shape. Did we ever go looked at those? What the current conditions are? How many trucks typically come in, and what would be the impact on that neighboring community? Because we have a lot of opportunities to look into those, right?
So I know on a couple of the recent projects, they're not fully built out yet, so I don't know if the traffic studies have been reviewed yet. We can certainly check with the planning offices if there's other projects in town that have had that done.
Right, because when I'm thinking about 100 trucks coming in, I think it's completely non-feasible option that 100 trucks coming at the same time. Typically, those trucks are penalized if they come early or if they come late.
So,
They said 60% of the traffic volume would be between 9 and 4.
Right, so because I think there was a concern raised during the those open public sessions about nighttime activities. I think that's why the restriction was towards the daytime activity. But I think they are looking at other options that we have in the within the town, or maybe with surrounding towns. We may get some idea on how they are regulated and what options we have to regulate. So,
Yeah, I mean, neighbors certainly can file complaints post occupancy and all that stuff and work through the building. So neighbors can certainly file complaints if they have issues with sound or other issues, just like any other location in the community, whether that's with sound with the police department or the building commissioner's office. So they have those options.
thank you.
I just looked up the email from Louise O'Neill, so it kind of goes to James and Dennis's comments. The special permit is specifically related to the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. So the special permitting they're having to get relates directly to the aquifer.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if that means more enforcement or what they're trying to waive or.
Well, we can find out what the get more detail on the special permit.
I don't know, she just said there was.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're getting into planning board.
correct.
Yeah,
I agree.
Not finance committee, so.
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just, Keith, one last question. If this were to go up, do we have an estimated revenue this site would bring to the town?
So the current estimate for the shell of the buildings only is approximately $500,000 a year in property revenue. That doesn't include any build-out revenue or personal property tax revenue or excise tax for vehicles that may be associated with the property.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments from the committee, I shall open it to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on Article 32? Yes, sir, please come up. The gentleman in red. If you could come up, sir, introduce yourself with your name, your address, and your precinct number. And in the interest of time, I ask you to limit it to about 2
Yep,
minutes.
it's pretty quick.
Okay, thank you, sir.
My name is Robert Heller. I live at 116 Sewell Street, right on Newton Pond, Precinct 1.
Thank you.
And I apologize, a few of the things have already been referenced, but I'll go through quickly. Thank you for allowing me to share with you. When town meeting members voted to change zoning from commercial to limited industrial, we're not sure that they fully understood the magnitude of this decision. With the new zoning designation, a proposed project of nearly 1 million square feet of warehouse buildings serviced by 500 tractor-trailer trucks per day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, is being considered. It sits directly next to the aquifer. that supplies Shrewsbury with its water. It is next to wetlands and situated in a residential neighborhood. Part of the strategic plan for Shrewsbury includes the All in Shrewsbury Municipal Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. One of the goals was 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. One quote from this plan is, quote, balancing growth and development with protecting natural and recreational resources is possible and integral to preserving Shrewsbury's community character, unquote. The Shrewsbury Master Plan of 2016 stated that serious protection of the northwest quadrant of Shrewsbury, where the aquifer is located, should only be used for passive recreation. This project poses the possibility of 182,500 tractor-trailer trucks passing through Shrewsbury each year. An average 1 mile trip of one tractor-trailer truck produces 0.89 pounds of carbon dioxide. This translates to 162,425 pounds of carbon dioxide for each mile of each of these trucks traveling through Shrewsbury. And that's just 1 mile a day. I'm sure they're going to be traveling more than 1 mile a day. This proposed project jeopardizes a lot of the positive environmental improvements that many Shrewsbury residents are striving for. The town needs to go back to the original commercial zoning for this area. We believe that 142 Clinton Street needs to be cleaned up and developed with a proposal that carefully considers the impact it will have on all Shrewsbury residents. The immediate neighborhood, the wetlands, the aquifer, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the streets that we drive on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other member from the public? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, I'm Rachel Missel, 23 Cypress Ave. Couple of things. One, thank you for your time, and two, thank you for this podium. It makes it so much easier to speak to everybody when we're not looking at the back of everyone's heads. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. So initially, this zoning change occurred in 2020. Then in 2021, the town meeting overwhelmingly approved the declaration of a climate emergency. So that marked a turning point in what we value as a town, and marked the point at which we decided that we really needed to pay attention to this. Subsequent to that, there was the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. Now that is a municipal plan. The Select Board has since proposed the development. They're taking applications, people should apply, for a sustainability committee, which will help with bringing the residents around to, sorry, I'm losing my words tonight. That'll bring the residents into the entire movement of mitigating climate change. So this proposal was approved, or this zoning change was approved, at a time when the mindset of Shrewsbury was a little bit different. And so I think it's time that we look at this in a different light and say, does this fit with the current mindset of the municipality and of the residents? And I don't think it does. And so it's for that reason that I think it's important that you consider supporting this article, this citizens petition, so that we can let people make that decision. It does no harm to bring it forward and let town meeting reconsider this decision. It's important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who would like to comment on Article 32? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Karen Bohinky, 141 Sewell Street. I first learned of this project in December. I got invited to the community meeting, which was on December 16th or 19th. And I was amazed at what was being proposed. And I did not attend the 2020 meeting where this article was approved and the zoning was changed. However, since that first meeting, I've attended every meeting, every planning board meeting, every conservation meeting, and I was surprised at what was being proposed. Almost 1 million square foot, 2 warehouses in a residential, abutting residential areas. There's 83 abutters on all sides of where these warehouses will be built, proposed. But that's not 83 people, because there's more than 1 person per house. So say there's over 200 people that are gonna be impacted by this. As far as the aquifer, I'm not sure I knew what an aquifer was before this project, but now I know a lot about aquifers. And for our aquifer, I understand that it's our primary source of water, and it's gone through many protections in order that that doesn't get contaminated. And it is an area that's a very high use for being contaminated because of the soil. This project proposes to build over 44 acres, make it impervious, and build over that. And that area is where the recharge goes in to the aquifer that feeds the well. So they're gonna build 44 acres impervious, including sidewalks. That's a lot. The developer has proposed best management practices, which include infiltration basins and lots of things. It's very complicated, very complex, and is gonna create a lot of long-term committed operational maintenance to keep that so there's no issues. But what if we have a truck that turns over and spills oil, and that's not captured? It drains into the wetlands, it drains into Newton Pond. If we have a contamination, this is our only source of water. What do we do? I think it's risky, and I'm surprised that we would take that risk, and that we would leave the operation to a developer to manage that risk. I think as a town, it's not a good idea. And I am worried about the abutters. During all of these meetings that we've had, the developer and the town have not mentioned that there are 83 abutters. I went to the list and I counted them. There are 19 residents within 100 feet of this property. I'm one of them. And the rest of them are within 300 feet. And as mentioned by Krista, it's an environmental justice area, and I think there's a lot of people that have not spoken up. A lot of them may not even know about this. It's an area that some of them are low minority, low income, or not low minority, but minority, low income, don't have access to computer technology that some of us do. So there are many concerns, but I think it's the wrong idea. I think there's something better that could be built here, something smaller that's not such an impact on the environment. There's wetlands, the aquifer, there's noise, there's pollution. So I think Bob mentioned we had a sound study done a few weeks ago, and one of the residents got up and he said, well, I live up on the hill across from where the driveway will be. And the sound study was done not up on the hill where he lives. So therefore, the building's gonna be here, and he's gonna be up here. So I think all of those noises are gonna be known to him and his family, possibly 24 hours a day, maybe 7 days a week. So I think it's a bad idea, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who would like to comment on Article 32? If not, thank you, everyone.
No, there's one.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, please.
Scott Nolan, 20 Bosworth Road. 1 liter of motor oil will pollute 1 million liters of water. You only get one chance on this. At one of the planning board meetings, I suggested that GFI establish an escrow account that would allow the town to switch to MWRA water if the aquifer is contaminated. And I was told, we'll sue them. You can't fix an aquifer. Our only alternative would be the MWRA, and that water has a different chemical composition from ours. It would require big infrastructure investments. Please revisit this. Allow the question to the town meeting, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Nadine Garnett, Precinct 2 Town Meeting Member. I am one of them. I am a member that did vote on both of these articles to change the zoning and also for the building height. And when we changed the building height, I honestly, I don't remember it being just for the uses that others remember it. I personally remember warehouses being one of them. I'm not gonna lie. I can't imagine I think it's 50 feet at this point.
Yep.
I can't imagine 50 feet being for research and development. I am sympathetic to the neighbors. I just drove through Pennsylvania and the warehouses there are just astronomical. That being said, I clearly remember us changing the zoning and the the heights to accommodate something like this. So I just wanted to clarify that. I do have a question. If we do something like this, as a town, what is the penalty from the developer? They're the one that brought these articles forward. They paid for these. I believe they actually paid for the town meeting when we changed these articles. I'm pretty sure they actually paid for the town meeting.
They didn't
No.
pay for it. I remember the bill. They didn't pay for it.
So, no, they didn't pay for it?
No.
Okay, so,
No.
so regardless, so what is the penalty for us if we actually change the zoning? Is there anything that they can come back on us for if we reverse that they made these investments
We had
and
discussed
now
that
we
earlier.
turn?
Mr. Bollinger, maybe you can
Yeah,
repeat.
so I'm not sure if there's a penalty on the town. I mean, the developer can take steps to protect their rights. I am not an attorney, so I'm not sure what they are, but there are avenues for them. And I can't speak to any penalties that would come back to the town.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Krista Dupre, again, thank you for having this and looking at the citizens petition. Being the finance committee in a taxpayer side, what I also wanted to bring about was, yes, this particular project, as I'm sure you see here, other projects in town of how much tax revenue as well as housing brings in, is we understand that this would be a benefit for the tax, or for the town with the tax. Potential of 500,000 beyond till the build, as well as the other taxable items. But we also, as I hope you, in looking forward, is how could that potentially also impact our own residential tax? Is our house going to be assessed? Is our property going to be assessed? And will that actually be lower? And would that actually add up to barely even, are we currently already bringing in that tax base and now we lose taxes because of this type of development? Or I should say this type of zoning that permits this type of development. And I know that might be hard to quantify, but again, looking at the type of developments that can occur under the current zoning, there could be larger impacts to the town that are intangibles and unknowns. I think of roads especially, for example, depending upon the type of business that could potentially impact, and other infrastructure that maybe we just don't have those tax dollars for, whether it's police, fire. I personally think of a truck that could catch on fire. Might be a little scary, again, over the aquifer. But I'm looking at the tax base, because I am very aware of all of that. I've been very pro-town of many things in this town, from overrides to builds to funding police buildings, et cetera. So I take being a town meeting member very seriously, and understanding where the taxes are. But I also look at the impact and the unknowns. And that's very hard to understand, especially in this commercial, industrial area. Or excuse me, limited industrial, but going back to commercial business, that there is still the potential to raise taxes and to hopefully keep property values the same, if not increase over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public, please?
Hi, I'm Paula Tebow, and we really do appreciate the committee's attention and a chance for the public to come and speak to. And I just wanted to quickly say that I did receive a letter in April of 2020, which was probably 2 months into the pandemic, as an abutter, that the GFI was proposing a zone change. In the letter, it did say that the zone change would not impact the residents in the area. So because of the timing, it was in pandemic, filed it away, didn't learn about the project again until December of 2023. And I've learned so much since then. And I just wanted to speak to the MIPA point, and your questions about the environment. So MIPA does establish regulations that put in review thresholds for projects that are of a nature, size, or location that are likely to cause damage to the environment as identified in MIPA. So the developers have submitted a draft environmental impact report to MIPA just this past March, I believe. It's currently open for public comment. So it is important that the public understand that this project is designated under MIPA review. And that is why the environmental justice policy is also put into place, because of the MIPA review. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public?
I'm just gonna follow up on,
30 seconds.
yeah, Paul, very,
Yeah.
the town, Krista has asked that the town publish on the website all the various documents. And the MIPA report, as of the other day, is now on the town website, if anybody wants to look at.
Okay, thank you.
200 pages or so, but.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? I'll ask you to be quick if there's anybody. We're running out of time. Not, thank you, everyone. We shall now move to Article number 40. It will be presented by Mr. Jonathan Scott from Prologis and Mark Donahue from Fletcher Tilton. I ask them to come up to the stage.
Hey, how are you? Good evening. I'm Jonathan Scott, Development Director with Prologis. Do you have the slide that I sent through? Second.
Yeah, please.
I'm here tonight just to speak on behalf of the project that we're looking off of Syntec Boulevard. Tonight, as you can see up here, we're just discussing a approximately 2-acre easement that we're requesting as part of the access plan for the design facility. It's approximately a 850 square foot facility right off of Syntec Boulevard. The goal here is, and we've stated it before since we've been through a couple of meetings, is just trying to, and the best, intent for the town is to plan this facility as best as we can for long-term, awareness with traffic, right? So the 4-way intersection is what we're trying to achieve here. We're preliminarily in traffic study work right now. We have not finalized that. But from the preliminary work that we've seen right now, we don't necessarily need this easement, but what we do want to do is make sure that for the long-term thought of the town that we're doing what's the best engineering practice, and that's generating a four-way intersection. So as you can see on the plan here, the large area above, that's approximately 70 acres. We're talking about 2 acres of a piece of land that'll take us right across from Fortune Boulevard as the primary entrance to the facility.
I open up to the committee. Mr. Jean?
Could you talk a little bit more about your development? Who it
yes.
is?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if everybody realizes who we're talking about.
Sure, absolutely. So the facility here is a facility for UPS. This would be a regional hub, automated hub that they're looking to build in this area.
Could I have one follow?
Sure, please.
That land also extends into Grafton?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. This project right here, you can see the dividing line.
Yeah.
The property spreads into both Grafton and Shrewsbury, so we've been in communication with both towns to make sure that we're adhering to all policies and making sure that we're designing well within the requirements of both towns.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Kind of going off the last one, what type of trucks, et cetera, do you expect, or vehicles coming in and out using that intersection traffic flow?
Sure. I can't speak to the numbers right now. We've done our preliminary traffic study. We're currently working to finish up our full traffic study. However, this is a regional hub, so there's going to be large tractor trailers and also some of the package vehicles as well.
And how many bays, et cetera? I mean, just how does this, I mean, I'm trying to get a feeling of this one versus the other one we're talking about.
Sure.
Not you, but that we're talking about before.
No, absolutely. I can't speak to the exact number, but there are hundreds of bays, right? But this facility, what it is it's not necessarily that many volumes of trucks. They just have a lot of active bays for parcels coming in and parcels being distributed back out.
So, Mr. Scott, just coming back to what you said about making a four-way, and you said that this is more of, your traffic studies have not yet concluded yet, and this is more of like a backup plan or just to improve the traffic flow? Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the initial study that we've done right now, the numbers that have come back has shown that the staggered intersection actually works a little bit better than the four-way intersection. They're both acceptable as we speak right now. But again, in an effort to actually partner with Shrewsbury and create a long-term solution that's more design protocol would be to try to generate this four-way intersection where it sits. So the idea here is to do that.
One more question.
Sure.
Can you point out on the map exactly where that intersection will be?
Absolutely.
What we're talking about?
It's possible to zoom in a little bit, or we?
Can't zoom anymore, but it's
No,
right
that's-
here, right?
okay.
With the map.
So right here, this is if you come down Centennial Boulevard, this is Fortune Boulevard, and directly across from that is where we're looking to make the primary entrance. As it sits right now, where the owned property by UPS is, it's it'd be a staggered entrance.
Okay.
So we're looking to generate a four-way intersection right there. Yes, ma'am.
One follow. What is the total acreage there?
This total acreage?
Yeah.
This total acreage is around 71 acres, and the area that we're discussing or requesting is just a little over 2 acres.
Yeah. And how much more of it is in Shrewsbury?
So all of this is Shrewsbury. The line is right here. Everything above this is Shrewsbury, and there's also a National Grid power line that goes right through here. So there's actually a pretty definitive break in this property that's already in Shrewsbury.
So the easement is butting up, basically abutting where the power lines are, so there's
Yes.
nothing really buildable under those power lines.
Correct.
I would suggest that there's nothing buildable under the power lines. I would not suggest that this parcel is not buildable.
No.
So,
correct.
I'm just saying where they're putting it up to, it's.
Yes.
You're asking for 2 acres on that one side of there's not a lot of room to build in those 2 acres because of the power lines.
That's correct. There's approximately 7 acres total right here. just maybe a little under. We're looking at 2 acres right here, and here's the easement lines for the National Grid power line,
Could it-
transmission line.
We also have access to our power. Selco has,
Correct.
Yes,
Selco has a power station, or I don't know what the title is, right on the other side of that
Yes.
power line.
you know,
Yep.
it doesn't cut off any of their access at all.
No, it does not, and this is a non-inclusive easement, so if there was ever in the future some more development by Selco, we could utilize this access point to connect to the property,
So it would benefit the town?
potentially.
So what's highlighted in red, that's owned by the town, is that correct?
That's correct. So that property goes all the way down to the fire station.
Okay, and so we're just talking about an easement, so the town would still own that, but we would allow
Correct.
this to build a road and use it,
Right, and also another point
or
of,
not a road, but an
Right.
entrance.
another point of information, so if this does pass a town meeting, there will be an RFP process. We have an appraisal ongoing now with this piece of property to understand what the value is. And we would create an RFP, and there would be a bidding process for UPS to, I guess, purchase the easement or pay for the access rights.
Just a quick question in regards to who would be responsible for the care and maintenance, plowing, et cetera?
UPS.
UPS, thank you.
Yep.
Rajesh?
So this being a non-exclusive easement, so what happens to, let's say, in future if we need access? Because I think it looks like this is only used for the traffic flow, or there will be any permanent structures in there?
So it will be used for traffic and utilities to get to the UPS site. So-
Right.
But the way the easement is written, if in something happened in the future, it was a development on the Shrewsbury property, we could also use this as an access point and maybe connect to it.
Okay. So and one quick follow-up. So how much? So this does not. So is it anticipation of excess truckload coming through, or is it just a easement, like a ease of driving through?
Just the ease of driving through, and again, just trying to generate, best practice at that 4-way intersection. I believe I mentioned before, the dark gray area is our current plan for access to the job site, which satisfies everything that UPS would need for an entrance. But in an effort to generate the most, optimal intersection, for the town, that's part of the reason why we're requesting this access, since we're so close to that other street.
May I
Thank you.
follow up?
Sure, please.
So if the traffic study says the staggered intersection would be better for the flow of traffic, it's possible that you would choose that to be the driveway and the entrance, or if this passes, that would kind of make the decision regardless of what the traffic study does, or traffic study says.
The difference is marginal right now, and again, it's a preliminary study, but if this passes, we would make that the entrance regardless.
Be a straight line.
I hate staggered intersections, so I get it. They're confusing.
Jim?
Question for the town. Do we have a position on this? In terms of, has it gone through all the review necessary if need be, or?
So there's been initial staff review through planning, and we've had initial meetings with UPS, Prologis, with planning, DPW, water, sewer, all of that. So I think there will be continued review, like site plan process with planning board is expected to start in June, Jonathan. So we'll go through the entire process. So all the peer reviews will happen to
Thank you.
what we think.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I open it up to the public on Article 40. Are there any questions or comments on Article 40 from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nadine Garnett, Precinct 2 again. Since we're at Finance Committee and this is our finances, most of this is in Grafton and we get a little piece of it, but we're gonna get all the traffic. Grafton gets all the tax dollars. What do we get out of this deal? We get all the traffic and they get the bulk of the tax dollars. What do we get? Just curious.
Mr. Bollinger, do we have that data?
So we do know that 30% of the building is in Shrewsbury. Originally, when the building was first designed, 100% of that building was in Grafton. We did ask UPS to move it just for that reason, so that we got a piece of the pie, so to speak.
Do we,
So we at least get something for all the traffic?
Correct.
Okay, well, better than nothing.
do we know how big that pie is gonna be?
So we know it's 30% of the building. I am unsure. I don't know what the estimated value of the building. I don't know, Jonathan, if you do, what that is. I don't know if we've done that.
No, we're still working through that analysis through the two towns.
And then other question is, what happens if we say no? What happens to this whole project? It still goes through? Because you're just gonna go through the original one down here, cross-cut, offset parameter, if we don't give you the easement.
That would be the plan.
But if we do give you the easement, you're gonna, not you, UPS will be bidding on, bidding to get that easement, so we'll get
Value,
some,
yes.
we'll get a value there.
Yep.
So I think Danine has a very good point, what are we getting out of it, but the problem is that building's gonna be built either way. So now it's, can we get at least a little extra out of it? Because the traffic will be the same whether we give that right of way or not, is my understanding. So that 2 acre easement may actually bring in more revenue for us. It's not a big revenue, I'm not gonna say it's a big win, but and it may actually make that whole intersection easier and cleaner and possibly safer, because it's a 4-way intersection. Okay. Can we put up a toll?
What, say that
Can we put up a toll booth?
Beth, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna,
Could you come up to the podium, please?
so Beth Cassavant, Precinct 8, but Chair of the Select Board. I was just going to reiterate, I think the point that you just made, Dennis, is, and this came before the Select Board, but we haven't acted as a recommendation yet on warrant articles. So the gray area that you see here is how it would exist now. So if we, at town meeting, decide to not grant the easement, this project happens, and then you have this funny intersection. So by granting the easement, to me, and I'm only speaking for myself, the benefit would be that the intersection would then be uniform rather than being staggered. And so, to me, that's a benefit to Shrewsbury. If we're going to have traffic coming, into the community, we would want it to come in a way that makes more sense. To your point, Diana, where a staggered intersection isn't necessarily the preference. And I think also that Selco is providing the power to the entire project.
That is correct.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Thank you. We shall now move to Articles 33 and 39, which are CPC related. We'll start with Article 33. I invite Deborah Mooney, Chair of the CPC, and I believe, David, you're going to make some initial comments on Article 33.
Yep. Article 33, there is no project funding directly in this article. This is just setting the estimated revenues for each of the CPA revenue buckets. The FY25 estimated CPA surcharge will be based on the FY25 assessment and tax rate. The assessor's office takes the value, they deduct $100,000 and calculate the tax rate on that lower number, and then the CPA charge is then a 1% of that result. And that's where we have the estimated, in your CPA revenue of $848,990. And the estimated state matching funds at this point are estimated at 21% or $178,475. for a total of $1,027,447 in total revenue. And then from there, we take the appropriations, 5% for the administrative fees, 10% for each one of the CPA buckets, the Historic Resources Reserve, Community Housing Reserve, and the Open Space and Recreation Reserve. Then the final one is 65%, or the remainder is the undesignated reserve. And that's what this article sets to do right here, is to set the funding allocations for the CPA projects and further articles.
Ms. Mooney, are you going to say anything on Article 33 as well?
No, Mr. Snowden has covered the budget perfectly. I'll tell you about how we want to spend it.
Okay.
Just one question. This is basically the same formula we're using every year.
Correct. Provided from the state, there is a draft warrant articles, and the figures are adopted through the assessor's office.
No, so this is, in general, there's no change to what we've done in the past.
That is correct. Then the numbers change, but
Yes,
process is
but
the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for 33? Yeah, for 33, Article 33.
Yeah, so with the state matching fund, do we know what was the comparison from the last year? Did we get?
This is the 21.02%.
And then so last time?
That's what it was.
Okay, that's so for this year, this fiscal
So
year.
we're keeping it at a lower amount, or we're not sure if we're going to get more, so we're keeping it at that 21%.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to see whether it looks like there will be a decline, but
yeah.
So we haven't received the final numbers yet.
Not yet, no.
Okay.
And then one last question. Do we know what's left over from the previous years? I mean, this is $1 million this year.
Yep.
And I don't know how much we spent in the past, but we have a lot more in these buckets.
Correct. I can dig up some of those numbers, and I imagine, Deborah, you'll have some of that as well if you need to, but we can provide that. And the CPA does meet regularly, and they have gone over their budget.
And they usually include a memo in the packets.
Right. It's just be good for the town meeting members and everyone to know how much is there and what, I mean, we've all paid a lot more taxes in the last few years, and at least we know some of it's going to the town to be spent on the town for recreational stuff. So it'd be good to know what that number is.
Milind?
Yep, I had similar question/comment just for my own clarification. Is there a timeline that in a certain time frame, like 3 years, 5 years, you have to spend certain amount of money?
I believe it's 2 years once the appropriated the funding needs to be completed and used.
The funding agreements we have with each applicant is that the funds must be expended within 2 years unless this Community Preservation Committee votes to extend it, and we'll have a discussion if it gets to that, if there's extenuating circumstances, but generally it's only encumbered for 2 years.
Just follow up, and so if you do require to extend, is it like again for 2 years, or like is it always go with the 2-year increment?
Now, since we've only had 1 year under our belt so far, I believe we'll discuss that.
Okay.
If at the end of the 2-year period we need to revisit those agreements.
Thank you.
That's a quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
So with the funds that we have in the CPA that we didn't spend, right, it carries over to next year. So how long we can carry over? Is there a statutory limitation on that?
It does not deplete from the account unless expended.
Otherwise, it stays in there until we expend it.
Exactly. That's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Diana.
Sorry, I'm sure somebody asked this last time, but just refresh my memory. If we don't need all of the administrative expenses in a given year, does that then just go into the budgeted reserves?
That's a great question, yes. It flows back into the undesignated reserves.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Any other questions from the committee on Article 33? If not, I open it to the public. Any questions specifically to Article 33? Okay, we shall move now to Article 34. Ms. Mooney.
And Article 34, will actually, a town meeting will be asked to pass over this article. Actually, let me back up. I don't know if the public at least knows how projects are brought to CPC by town departments as well as nonprofit organizations and private citizens. And all of the applicants go through the same vetting process. The first step is to determine whether or not a project is eligible for CPC funding according to the parameters set forth by the original CPA legislation. All communities in the Commonwealth that adopted CPA are bound by the same eligibility standards. If a project's deemed eligible, then the applicant's invited to submit a full application for funding. And we look at everything very thoroughly. We look for how the project aligns with community priorities identified annually in our community preservation plan, and consider if a proposed project is viable, sustainable, and if it fits in our budget. And it was our determination that these articles that follow do fit all of those parameters. However, since we voted on our last month's meeting, this is the beginning of this month, on April 6th, Article 34 pertained to funding a feasibility study for the Housing Authority. And they have since found, and I believe have since found another source of funding, and will be asking us to not fund them. So at town meeting, we will be asking town meeting to, I believe the moderator will ask to pass over this article. Article 35 asks for an appropriation of $13,450 for the installation of a permanent story walk at Lake Street Park. It's along the path along Jordan Pond. This project's a joint venture of the Shrewsbury Public Library and the Department of Public Works. If I may, I'll just run through all of them, and then if you have questions.
Okay,
that
we can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Article 36 asks for $205,000 for the purpose of the Mountain View Cemetery Historic Gravestones Phase 2 Preservation and Restoration Project. This follows a feasibility study which CPC approved and paid for last year that examined the inventory and condition of historic gravestones. This is the next step to actually preserve and restore. Article 37 is a request for $100,000 for the purpose of building a parking lot and access to Camp Wanigan. This is additional funding for a project that was approved last year because the circumstances of completing the project have changed. The Trails Committee and the DPW are working jointly on this project. Article 38 is also a project of the Trails Committee and the Department of Public Works. It seeks $4,157 to create a wheelchair accessible trail also at Camp Wanigan. It'll be with a surface that wheelchairs can go on, baby strollers, will be a nice trail to have. And Article 39 seeks $5,000 for an ADA accessible feasibility study for the District 5 schoolhouse. This follows an accessibility audit completed last fall, which was also funded by CPC. And these are the steps needed to find out what can be done with the schoolhouse for greater public use. So we're happy to answer any questions about a specific article, and we're grateful for the opportunity.
Sure.
On
Jean.
39, is that the old mill?
Pardon me?
Is that the old mill schoolhouse?
Yes, District 5 is in the corner of Old Mill and Main Street.
Rajesh.
So Article 39, so I remember we have, not 39, sorry, but 37, Camp Wanigan parking lot. So didn't we pass something last time?
We did. Last year, we approved funding for Camp Wanigan parking lot area to improve access to those trails and the old scout camp out there. And at the time, they thought that the project could be completed with more town resources that were already at play, but it's turned out we can't use some of the labor, and we're going to need to use an outside contractor for some of the work, which originally we thought would be able to be done.
How much did we fund last time for that? Remember, if you remember?
It was, you're going to make me, Chris, can you look that up faster than I can? I apologize, I don't have it memorized. It's in one of my reports.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
142, and then that was mostly used for preparing the site, or?
For tree removal, site work, and creating a parking lot. I believe it'll be crushed gravel?
No, I think it'll be paved, and they have not expended the majority of those funds. They've only used some of them.
And then-
know how much they did expend, because they broke in off of 140.
I can look at it quick, yeah.
And on the one follow-up on the 39, so with the ADA wheelchair accessibility, is that a trial will be revamped to just to have?
They're going to do they did an audit of the building and the opportunities for compliance, and now they'll do a feasibility study to figure out if it truly can be done. For example, some of the doorways are not the adequate width for a wheelchair to enter. This study, the accessibility feasibility study, will determine whether or not they can widen a doorway or raise a floor in a historic building and still follow the historic preservation guidelines set forth and find out if it's actually possible to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Jim had a question.
Deb, just back on 37, the 142. So you had said, if I heard you correctly, the scope change versus the resources allocated last year, or when it was?
I'm sorry, I have a cold in my...
No, that's okay. I was just back on 37. So from the 142 that was approved last year, and now we're asking for another 100,000.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you could elaborate. So it sounds like you said earlier, the scope is a little bit bigger than the resources allocated by the town. Is that the reason we're coming back?
Yes.
For 100? And just reflecting back, what is it we may have missed in that review last year? Is it just scope?
I believe
Size?
some of it, that we had thought that some of this could have been done with, existing town resources. The project itself isn't larger. We just don't have, I think, would it be accurate to say the equipment and manpower to do it as we
Okay.
originally thought within regular duties of town employees.
One question.
Sure.
How many, can you refresh my memory, how many parking spots is that gonna be for? I mean, it's a beautiful area, that whole, and it's very inaccessible right now, I know that. But is it?
I wish my trail experts were here. I can find it. Why do I think 10?
I think 10 is the number in my head, but.
It's the number in my head. Let's go with that.
So it's just, this is 100,000 in addition to 141.
Yes.
So I would suggest that we change the motion to indicate that. It's appears from the motion that it's just 100,000 to build the parking lot. This is an additional funding. It's a little bit misleading the first time I read it.
Maybe we can add around 2 funding or something like that. So.
You'd say additional funding, but
Additional,
I don't know what you say legally on the warrant, but that does make sense. It'd be good for town meeting members to know
Yeah.
where it's an additional funding.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think to your question earlier, like what did we miss? Like I think it would be good to know. I get that this is year 1 or year 2 of this, right? But how can we have higher confidence in the amount being asked for will cover the work instead of having to come back? And I get that prices change and all of that, right? So I understand that, but it's hard when it's these large dollar amounts and then it's almost the exact same dollar amount again. So like double what we thought it was going to cost. Not quite double, but.
That's good. So this estimate is like do we do like maybe you also when you're reviewing the application you compare the costs if it's what's the cost benefit analysis, right? When it's done by our own team, their availability because of the kind of time limitations and everything. So this is the best possible way to go. If it's contracted out, so that it's not straining our own staff. That's what I'm trying to see.
That's what the presentation from Mr. Esposito suggested, and the committee voted unanimously to agree with him that the town was unable to do that part of the work, that it would have cost more to to contract with an additional party to do so, but
Mm.
that was the only way to complete the project.
So now it's contracting out now to someone else? outside
It
of
will
that?
be, part of it will be contracted out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee on Articles 33 through 39? If not, I open it up to the,
sorry, just-
please, Diana.
Have there been any other affordable housing? Because we've seen the recreation, we've seen the historic preservation, but I think, am I correct, this was the first affordable housing request?
This was the first request that we were able to consider and vote on. There had been discussions earlier about what might be possible, but this was the only one that was presented to the committee for consideration. And the reason for passing over it is because at the same time, in the interest of getting it done and finding funding, the Housing Authority had applied both to the Community Preservation Committee and to the Affordable Housing Trust. And the Affordable Housing Trust has agreed to fund that same study. So the Housing Authority was asking us to keep our money because, as we mentioned earlier, we can continue to reserve it and accrue it for if this feasibility study goes well, there'll be something bigger soon to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question, Milind?
On Article 35, when you talk about, making the story walk permanent,
Yes.
what does that involve?
The library and the Parks Department would like to purchase, they are, right now, I believe it's plastic, and I think it's a sheet cover. It will be a permanent post and a covered structure that the library staff can put the pages in, and it'll be better protected from the weather. It won't fall down every year, and it'll also be aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you.
Our family is one of them using that story walk, so.
Any other questions for Ms. Mooney from the committee? If not, I open it up to the public. Yes, Ms. Conant.
Dating on at Precinct 2. I just had a question about town staff doing the CPC work. How often are we using the town staff for CPC work? And how do we delineate what they're using it for? How are we paying them? How are our funds being separated? And when are we deciding when it's appropriate, when, like this project, I know there's other projects. Kevin has quite a few projects. The Edgemere project I know is one. So how are we breaking down when our staff is being overburdened for CPC projects?
Right.
And I think I had a question on another one, but I'll wait for that one first.
So I think that's a great question, and when we're receiving funds from CPC, typically those funds are only used for contractors. So in this case, in Camp Wanigan, the town staff work would have been done in kind, normal working hours. It's certainly part of Kevin's responsibility and town engineering department on design, like they've designed these projects, so that's all in-kind work that's not paid from CPC funds. And I know that there was some stormwater work on this project that is part of the reason the cost went up. I think to your point, like we got a little overwhelmed last year with a bunch of work, and so staff weren't able to complete the Camp Wanigan project as originally thought that we could.
Okay. I know the second one, the material for the wheelchair ramp at Camp Wanigan. What are we using for that? Does anybody know? I don't know if it's appropriate here, but Dean Park is not optimum. So if we're looking for the same handicap material as Dean Park, I would advise against it because I'm there regularly and I watch kids just pitch on their faces all the time. So I would highly recommend whoever's in charge of that project, don't use whatever's there. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Are there any other comments for Article 33 through 39 from the public? Right? Oh, you had a question? Sure. please.
So would the plan go forward be to not utilize the town resources? So when you're considering other projects, it would be looking at contracting fees that would be needed, or is it gonna be a case-by-case basis?
It's gonna be a case-by-case basis.
And that would be determined before the funds are requested?
Correct.
Okay, I don't see any other hands from the public. Thank you, Ms. Mooney. We can now move on to the next set of articles, Articles 1 through 6. Are we going to do that as a bundle or
No, we'll go through them.
one by one? Okay.
Dave, Keith, and myself will alternate between them. So Article 1 is an annual article to hear reports from town boards or committees that are not included in the annual town report. And at this time, we do not anticipate any reports to be heard by town meeting.
Any questions related to Article 1 from any member of the committee?
No, but weren't we gonna address Article 41 in that first packet?
That's later in the agenda.
Okay.
We're going to do that later today.
Second to last.
Any questions related to Article 1? I open it to the public. Any member of the public would like to comment on Article 1? Not, we can move to Article 2.
Article 2. This article proposes to fund the 300th Centennial Celebration Fund that was established at the May 2023 annual town meeting. All funds are dedicated to celebrate the 300th anniversary of Shrewsbury, and the 300th Anniversary Celebration Committee, which was established in February 2024, will develop and oversee the comprehensive plan for the celebration and promotion of the 300th anniversary celebration that will occur in 2027. To date, the committee has held 2 public meetings. The committee webpage is under development, and any interested parties in wanting to learn more or engage with this committee can reach out to the town manager's office, and we can help get you in contact with the committee.
I had a question on that, David. Is the grant amount determined by the town, or is it requested by the committee in terms of?
There's no grant funding.
I mean, the amount, that the sum of 25,000.
This was the town input on this initial funding. Yep.
That's good.
Sure.
So on the same on the funding. So so this is like maybe a startup to the committee to start working on all the campaign activities. Do we anticipate to fund it as we go into next year, or they're self-sustaining?
There will be donations, and I believe that the committee will be working on setting up ways to receive funds that way. Without having more detail from the committee, I can't answer that 100% at this time.
Yes, Beth.
So Beth Cassavant, Select Board Chair. So I can just fill in a little bit of the detail around the committee because Mr. Mizgar, Mr. Dobson, and I participated in their first meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago. So the committee's been established. Their role is basically to plan for the 300th celebration of the town, which will happen in 2027. And it's a big undertaking, so they do need some seed money to get started, especially if they need to do any, sign any contracts, those kinds of things. So just in discussions with the manager, we thought $25,000 would be an appropriate amount. Some communities do more, but we wanted to just give them that seed money, and then with the understanding that they do need to do fundraising and look for donations and maybe corporate sponsorships and community sponsorships just to fund the rest of it. So it's just a way to kind of get them going and get the work going. They were looking for a date that they could have their next meeting, and they're all really enthusiastic about getting started with it.
Thank you.
So, does that mean 25,000 is probably what we're gonna, as a town, pay for it, and hope the committee raises the rest of it, or do we
That's
think?
the intention,
or-
right? And like I said, every community they start their committee with some sort of funding to begin that work, because it is going to be a special community celebration, right? Doesn't happen very often, and
Happens
we
once.
want to set them up for success, for something that's going to benefit the whole community in a couple of years.
Yeah, I just was trying to get a handle on whether we thought this would be 25,000 this year, and then you get up to 2027, now it's another $200,000 the town has to do, because we planned
No,
this
that
whole
is
thing.
definitely
and-
not the intention, right? Because you think about it, they're probably gonna plan things like parades and galas and events. They'll raise money along the way.
Yep. No, I just wanted to clarify that for not just myself, but anyone that would be watching, and
No, I think that's a really good point.
this is the seed money, and then they're kind of on their own, and
It is the seed money, and there's nothing to say that they're going to spend all of it,
Right.
right? It's just there to get them started, and it may be that they fundraise enough that the seed money gets reimbursed, and they don't need it at all.
Great.
So just have to see how it goes. We have a few years.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Article 1 from the committee? If not, I open it up to the public. Any questions or comments? Sorry, Article 2. My bad. Article 2. I don't see any hands. We can move to Article 3.
Article 3 is another annual action by town meeting to appoint the trustees of the Wright and Harlow Charitable Trust Fund.
Any questions or comments on Article 3 from the committee? The public? Thank you. We can move to Article 4.
Article 4 is to fund bills incurred in a previous fiscal year. As of writing, there is no prior fiscal year bills to pay at this point in time. If it stays like this, then the article will be recommended for defeat.
Any questions on Article 4? The public? Thank you. We can move to Article 5.
Article 5 is another annual article to make transfers or adjustments to the current fiscal year budget, which would be FY24. And at this time, there are no anticipated transfers or adjustments to be made. So in addition to the prior article, we would recommend defeat.
Any questions for Article 5 from the committee? The public? Thank you. Article 6.
Article 6 proposes to deposit $1,273,212 into the Special Purpose Override Stabilization Fund. These funds will be reserved for future appropriation by the town to fund the operations of municipal and educational departments, as well as shared operating support expenses of the various departments. The use of this special fund is the centerpiece of the commitment of the Select Board and the School Committee to the town in its prolonging duration of the funds raised from the approved override ballot question of May 2021. The current fund balance of the override stabilization account as of March 27th is $7,671,942. And the current financial plan, as we're moving into fiscal projection 2, enables the 7th year of the 2021 override to be balanced.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
What was the original years we were expecting?
4.
So we've gone about 80% more than we expected on this override.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Gene.
Quick follow-up. Are those figures gonna change from the last selectmen's meeting where you rearranged some of the budget as far as capital expenditures go?
Which figures in particular?
Well, fire truck, for instance.
Yep. We'll get to, not for the override stabilization. We do have an article later where we're going to be depositing money into our general stabilization, and we'll discuss that in a little more detail at that point in time. I'll help clarify that.
Any other questions on Article 6 from the committee? From the public? Thank you. We'll skip over to Article 8.
Article 8 is another annual article to offset the tax rate.
What's
By,
that? No, that's not in the order. We're doing 8 to 10.
so it's another annual article to offset the tax rate by accepting funds from Selco municipal light side, just to reduce the burden of the tax rate.
I think it took us a little time to find the page, so.
Page 28.
Got it?
Page 28.
Yeah.
And I can actually just go through 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
All related. So 9 is similar, accepting money from the first one is accepting money from cable access, Selco side, to reduce the tax rate. Article 9 is accepting funds from the light department side of Selco to reduce the tax rate. And then Article 10 is transferring $500,000 from free cash to also reduce the tax rate.
Any other questions on 8, 9, or 10?
Just
Yeah.
Obviously, the number's getting much lower coming from cable. My understanding is eventually we're kind of be phasing out almost anything coming out of the cable to just coming on municipal light. So there is a reason why the numbers are changing like this.
Yep.
But the overall payment that we're getting from them is not going down.
Yeah, it's just kind of switched.
It's just kind of switching. Okay.
And we should also note in Article 9, this is a little bit higher than the franchise agreement. We're also receiving about $153,000 from Selco to offset costs related to the town's IT expenses. And that's a pilot that they've been providing that will diminish over time as we encumber the full cost of the IT program.
Okay.
So, as far as Article 8 is concerned, does the move to streaming, like, sort of offset any of this, at the point that Dennis raised?
I think that definitely impacts it.
Mhm.
I don't think the streaming side impacts
Correct.
this figure
No.
at all, so.
Any other questions, 8, 9, or 10? Milind?
Just out of curiosity, I know the Selco project is going on for the fiber. You know, what's the adoption? Have we seen uptick in adoption of fiber?
I think that would be a question.
Yes, I'll go,
Yeah.
that'll be a simple question. Any other questions for 8, 9, or 10? I open it to the public. Any public comment or question on Articles 8, 9, or 10? Thank you. The next articles on the agenda, Articles 16 through 23, so let's first just go to the correct page.
Page 34.
34. Article 16.
Yep, Article 16 is a reoccurring article in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 100B. Annually, the town meeting is asked to fund the out-of-pocket medical expenses for retired disabled police officers and firefighters. The value of this article is subject to change. There are currently 4 individuals covered under this article, and we're anticipating $6,576 for FY25. For reference, last year it was $7,800. The year prior it was $6,464, and then the year prior to that it was $6,921. So the numbers have been pretty consistent year over year.
Are there any questions on Article 16 from the committee? Any comments?
I just add one comment. I don't know if a lot of people really understand what that is. And it's basically picking up the co-payments of the individuals.
The out-of-pocket.
Out-of-pocket
Yeah.
Any other, Rajesh?
And then this coming to the town, through the town, because the town provides, not from their individual budgets, but because the town is providing the health care. Is that why it's part of the town's? Why it's not in the fire department or police department's budget?
I mean, these are retired individuals that I guess we could be budgeting it part of those departments, but we call this out as a separate appropriation within town meeting. I see if I can get a better answer than that, but.
Okay.
Is it because health insurance doesn't come underneath, I think, the fire and police department?
That would be under operating support. We
Yeah.
could have it baked in there. There must be a reason under the MGL, specifically this
MGL.
chapter and
Disability.
this section, so.
Gene?
No, it was a contract that was negotiated 50 years ago
Okay,
for retirees from the police and the fire.
I see.
It's always been a separate item.
Is it disabled, retired disabled, or is it all retired? I guess would be the question.
It's all retired.
So we should probably change the wording in the retired comma, disabled.
Yes, it looks like that is as if it's retired and
Looks like we're only
disabled.
paying for the
Yeah.
retired disabled police
Yeah.
and firefighters, which I can definitely see that. That
Oh.
is something.
Maybe
that-
I'll retract that.
Yeah.
It could be just
Okay.
disabled, but it was a contract that went back, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I
We'd
would
be
imagine the
getting
expense would be
clarification.
greater too if it was
all
for all of
retired.
the retired.
Yeah, we can expand the description on this
Yeah.
for town meeting packet.
And just to go into that contract, do we know, is that an unlimited contract we will continue to do unlimited, or does it expire at any point of time?
I can give you zero answer right now, but I can look into that and
Okay.
provide you.
Hmm?
I do not believe it's retired. I believe it's
Yeah.
retired disabled.
Okay, that's what I thought. And again, if you're disabled and retired, it's, you know, I have no problem with that.
And then the language makes sense.
Yeah.
There's four, yeah.
There's only 4 affected, and there's many more retired
Right.
than retired disabled.
Any other comments on Article 16 from the committee? I open it up to the public. If not, we can move to Article 17.
Article 17 proposes to add $20,000 from free cash to the insurance trust fund. This trust fund primarily pays our deductible for claims related to police and fire injured on duty claims. We have a $45,000 annual deductible, and that deductible can be hit in prior fiscal years. So by having this money in the trust fund, it just allows us to be able to pay those claims as they're incurred.
Any comments on Article 17? Please.
So
Rajesh.
these funds can accumulate.
Yes, yep, so the current balance of the trust fund is about $60,000 right now.
So there's no statutory period to use or lose sort of thing. Thank you.
I open it to the public. Not, let us move to Article 18.
Article 18, to fund the general stabilization account. This funding will be deposited into the town's general stabilization fund, and the amount of $2,100,000. The general stabilization fund is the town's rainy day fund that would be used to overcome significant unforeseen financial challenges should any arise in the future. The general stabilization fund is part of the town's financial reserves, which, when sufficient reserves are on hand, has a positive impact on the town's bond rating, enabling, among other things, lower interest rates on borrowings. The Select Board has an established general stabilization policy that provides that at least 5% of the total annual operating budget for municipal and school expenses is to be held in general stabilization account. The current balance of the general stabilization fund is $5,505,529. The revised balance would be $7,605,529, which would be 4.98% of the municipal and school operating budget. It's anticipated that interest would get us to over the 5% by the end of this fiscal year. And to Mr. Budahagen's earlier comment, we're able to make this substantial appropriation here due to the Select Board's reallocation of ARPA funding. We kept the total appropriation from fiscal projection 1 the same, but we're funding the fire truck, which was in the capital budget, through ARPA funding. So that's $2.9 million that we'll be able to fund right through ARPA. And then we're using the free cash that we have on hand or the tax levy money that would have been on hand to then meet this appropriation here.
Milind.
So, one quick question. It's good that, we are targeting 5% and we are near there, 4.98. How often do we review that 5%? Is that a good number, or,
That's a great question. The fiscal policies are reviewed by the Select Board every year at the onset of the budget process. I think they adopt them around November, but we usually review them in the August period of time, provide the drafts to the Select Board for them to review right around the time of the revenue manual as well. The equivalence of that 5% will be reviewed at each ensuing budget year. That number will grow with the budget. So instead of having to put 2 million or 700,000 like we have been in the past couple of years, we may only have to put 100,000 in there to maintain that 5%.
one follow-up, but how do we determine, we don't need 5.5%, and
Yep.
we need only 5%?
Yep. So during the review of the fiscal policies, which we use guidance from the Division of Local Services, the DOR, and other resources from the state, we collaborate with other communities to determine what makes most sense financially. The range is usually around between 5 and 7% is recommended. And from our conversations with bond counsel, or even bond rating agencies, being around the 5% is a very healthy number to be at. Thank you.
Rajesh?
So these stabilization funds, are they in the money market, or are they liquid cash held at?
No, they are invested.
So there should be some income associated.
Correct. That's why I indicated that it's very likely that we'll be over 5% by the end of this fiscal year with the last quarter of interest.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to Article 18 from the committee? Not, I open it up to the public. Seems no questions. We'll move to Article 19.
Article 19 proposes to transfer $100,000 from the sewer special revenue fund to the sewer stabilization fund. This would bring the sewer stabilization fund balance to just over $1.8 million.
Any questions on Article 19? The public? Article 20.
Article 20 is a reoccurring article to set the annual spending limits for specific revolving accounts. This article establishes the annual maximum amount of funds that can be expended from 2 revolving accounts authorized by Article 22 of the General Bylaws in accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E1/2. The balance of the COA Transportation Fund is $12,686 as of March 27th, and the balance of the Donahue Rowing Center Fund is $46,878 as of the same time. And this article proposes to set the limits, which we've had pretty consistently, at $75,000 for the COA Transportation Fund and $400,000 for the Donahue Rowing Center.
So this is not a transfer of funds. This is setting the limit?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Any questions from the committee on Article 20? I open it up to the public. No questions, so Article 21.
Article 21 is an annual article to accept funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the repair and improvements of public streets and ways. These funds are allocated by a formula based on the number of lane miles. In FY25, we anticipate receiving $987,000 in Chapter 90 and an additional $497,000 in the Fair Share Amendment funding, totaling $1.4 million. And the anticipated streets to be covered by this funding have already been determined by the Department of Public Works. And those streets are Lake Street, Hill Street, School Street, Main Circle, Lakeview Ave, Dewey Road, Linwood Drive, Westmont Road, Westmont Circle, Maple Circle, Worthington Avenue, Robin Road, and a portion of Colton Lane.
Would those streets be put into an addendum for town meeting?
They can, yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
Ask one quick question. Do we ever put any of that money into reserve, Chapter 90? Because we're gonna have a big obligation here on 140 shortly between Shrewsbury Center and 290. We own that.
I believe, my understanding is that whatever is not used does get carried over.
So some of the work that's happening this year, they're using some leftover funds from last year, I believe.
So I believe we have about 1.7 million in current available funds.
Any other questions on Article 21 from the committee? I open it up to the public. No questions. Article 22.
Article 22 is another reoccurring article. Annually, the town meeting transfers funds from the sale of cemetery lots account to offset the salary expenses associated with the operation of our cemetery. The balance in the sale of lots account is $50,352 as of March 27th. And the balance in the perpetual care trust fund as a reference is $1,528,976 at the same time. And we're asking town meeting to transfer $18,000 from the sale of cemetery lots account. And that's been a pretty consistent amount for at least 10 plus years, I believe.
Quick question.
Aye.
Earlier this evening, Article 36 was discussing improvement of some of the historic resources of $205,000 being brought in. Is that involved in this in any way, or is that just completely separate?
So it's a completely separate, this is an annual thing. So the $205,000 improvement is to improve
Gravestones.
repair and renovate historic gravestones in the cemetery.
Do you know approximately how many gravestones that is? It's gotta be a lot. I'm just more, I know she's left,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
they
Just-
left, but,
Okay, thank you though, you answered my
I'm not
question.
sure what the number is.
We can probably get that information
Sure.
for the CPC to include in their description.
I believe it's in their application, but we can find that.
Any other questions for Article 22?
Yeah, just a quick question. I know we had to stop pre-selling plots because of the constraints. Has that now changed? Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's still as needs.
When do we anticipate that changing? Do we know?
So that's a Parks and Cemetery Commission decision. I suspect it may happen when the cemetery expansion is complete, but again, that's the Cemetery Commission's choice.
Thank you.
Anything else on the committee? I open it up to the public, Article 22. If not, Article 23.
Article 23 is another annual article to transfer funds, this year $35,000 from free cash to fund costs associated with the management of lakes, ponds, and waterways within the town of Shrewsbury. A large portion of this does go to Lake Quinsigamond, and we also receive $5,000 from the town of Grafton and $10,000 from the city of Worcester.
Article 23, any questions or comments from the committee?
Grafton, I understand, right? The shared water isn't a lot, but Worcester just continues to seem very low compared to what Shrewsbury's, contributing. Has there been any discussions, or how can that change? And I realize this is probably a question for somebody else, but.
So I believe these funds kind of funnel and are managed through the Lake Quinsigamond Commission.
Okay.
So we can maybe connect with them and see if they have any insight on that.
Okay, thank you.
Article 23, any questions from the committee? The public? Thank you. That finishes that bundle. We now skip over to Article 30.
Page 42.
I'll start with the
Okay,
initial
42.
proposal.
42, thank you.
Article 30, this will look very similar to a similar article from last year. This article proposes to transfer additional funds identified in the fall of 2023 from the Beal Elementary School construction project that were borrowed but not expended since the project came in under budget. This article revises the original funding that was approved as part of Article 32 at last year's town meeting for the development of the cemetery at 65 Prospect Street. And the transfer amount would be $1,316,328. Ultimately, our hope is, as bids come in, and with this transfer, we'll be able to rescind the borrowing authorization that was granted at town meeting last year, which would further support the town's financial standing. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick update on the project. So the cemetery design is complete or at 95%. The project has been through Conservation Commission. They're expecting their decision and order of conditions shortly. And then this will be going to the planning board for site plan review at their May 2nd meeting. We expect that process will take 3 meetings, 3 months. And so we hope to have the project out for bid late summer with possible construction beginning this fall.
Any questions on Article 30 from the committee? Brian?
The Beal School completion and taking these funds away from that project has been in place long enough where there is no risk of any of this being needed for Beal that's going to be applied to the cemetery.
Absolutely correct.
Milind, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to confirm, right, I'm assuming we had more preferential, like, in borrowing rates and things like that for Beal than we would if we had to borrow today, right? Is that part of the driver
Correct,
for this?
yes, yep.
Okay, so that decreases the cost because we're doing this.
Yeah, we had a
the-
better borrowing rate for the Beal project than we would at this point in time, is,
Okay.
yeah.
Any further questions or comments from the committee? I open it up to the public. No questions. The next article is, we skip over, is Article 41. Page is
48.
48.
48, page 48.
So Article 41 is the acceptance of public ways, and for this year, we have a portion of Puritan Street. This street has been constructed to town standards and is ready for acceptance as a public way. The planning board and select board have both reviewed the proposed layout, and it is ready to be heard by town meeting.
Any questions or comments on Article 41?
Just to clarify, why it's a portion of the street? Like, what happens to the other part of the?
That's a good question.
So what was the question, Rajesh?
Like, why it's a portion of the street? It's not the whole street. Why it's the half? Is it a half of the?
Well, so if you may recall, Puritan Street used to be a throughway, and as part of the Route 20 expansion project, in that section by Market Basket, it was determined that it would be more beneficial if that was closed and turned into a cul-de-sac. So I am not 100% sure, but we can ask town engineer Andy Truman, but you know, there may have been some land taking involved, and then they did subdivision approval to create this, and it's complete and built just like a normal subdivision street, and now we're just accepting it as a public way.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
This was just another development that went in, and
So it actually wasn't a development at all. It was part of the Route 20 expansion project at Market Basket. They determined that it was an unsafe intersection with Puritan Way.
Okay.
So they worked with the neighbors, and then as part of the Route 20 construction project, they built this cul-de-sac and closed the road to Route 20.
So, if we were to acquire the easement, and the select board has to acquire, would eminent domain basically protect us to get the market rate? How would that work?
So I can answer that. So when Puritan Street was originally developed, the developers provided waivers for the impacted properties, so there are no damages to be paid.
No, but don't we have to acquire it says at the last line, authorize the select board to acquire by gift, purchase, or by taking eminent domain an easement therein for all purposes of a townway and any other necessary easements. Is it indicating we may have to acquire more land in order to make this happen?
I don't believe that's the
Yeah,
case.
it's an if scenario.
Tend to be all-inclusive.
I see.
and forgive my ignorance on this, but was this a private way? And then
Nope, it was a
because-
public way.
It was a public way before, so it was a public road.
Yep.
We're just, taking whatever changes we had to do for make it a cul-de-sac and just paying and making it a public road again.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so.
Gee,
Okay, on that cul-de-sac, is this where we're gonna be making the connection for the new sewers?
No, I don't
We're,
believe so.
we're coming across 140
So
onto Clue
yep.
to Puritan. Isn't that where the connections are for Worcester?
I don't know that answer. We have to ask Andy
Yeah,
Truman.
okay.
any other questions on Article 41 from the committee? If not, I open it up to the public. Any questions, comments on Article 41? If not, we can now move to the last article of the day, Article 54. And Brian, you can help me get the page
63.
68.
Article
Dennis
50.
beat you to it. Article 54.
Yep, Article 54 is to amend the general bylaw pertaining to Article 25, the donation bin setback. Based off the significant work done by Justin Dobson in the town manager's office, this article proposes to amend the donation collection bin bylaw to allow for more flexibility in the location for the bins, where they can be located for the approved and eligible properties. Currently, the setbacks don't allow a lot of options for these places that have the donation bins to put them in spots that make sense. So it's making it more feasible for them to have donation bins and have them still be accessible.
Any questions or comments on Article 54 from the committee? Any member of the public would like to comment on Article 54? Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the scheduled articles for discussion today. Alex, could you confirm that I covered all of them?
Yes.
Yes, I did. Okay, so we will continue our public hearing on April 25th. I think it's probably, we can decide the meeting schedule later, the time later, but April 25th shall be the second session, which we'll continue reviewing these articles. And the schedule has been shared as far as which articles will be reviewed on that day. So may I get a motion to continue the public hearing on April 25th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Do you
All
want
again?
to put a time in there? Or?
It's gonna be 6 p.m., but we're gonna do that in item number 7.
Okay.
All in against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Let's move to agenda item number 5. That's to review and discuss the Finance Committee report that was shared with us. Has everyone had a chance to have a look at it? Are there any initial comments or feedback? If not, please do communicate directly to Alex or David in the next 2 weeks, and we can address them, and they can address them accordingly. We shall now move to reviewing the meeting schedule. I propose that we set the time for the April 25th meeting at 6 p.m. Is everyone okay with that? We do have a lot to yet cover, and we have deliberations as well. So 6 p.m. should be the time for that. Then our following meetings are the May 20th annual town meeting. We will probably have to have a meeting prior to the start of that meeting, about 15 minutes before, so we can put that in next week's schedule. And May 21st, if needed, if continued, and on Thursday, June 20th, we'll have our normal FinCom meeting. Is there any comment on the schedule? Anybody wants to say anything? I don't think there's any other business anybody would like to bring up.
I'll just ask one question. The moderator was going to make some changes to the layout of the annual town meetings. Who was going to be on the stages, where the seating was going to be. Has any of that been shared yet?
I did see that at one of the select
Yeah.
board meetings, but I don't know the details about it.
It looks.
We can communicate that. We can communicate with him and let you know.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll be-
sounds good. Any other comment on item number 8? Any other business? We'll just go through the correspondence very quickly. We received an email to the Finance Committee from Taylor Galusha regarding the March 2024 update. It was dated March 29th, 2024. And we received an email from Hannah Kane, our state representative, regarding Chapter 90 funding, dated April 4th, 2024. Any comments or questions on the correspondence?
Just one quick clarification. So the number that is mentioned by, in email by Hannah, is that part of the article
The
also?
Chapter 90, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
That number. So quick follow up on that. So that number still looks like still not finalized, right? As today's email looks like it. Ways
The
and
email
Means.
that she sent a few hours
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. Ways and Means Committee. There's a small slight difference, 0.3% difference or something between those.
That's the cherry sheets, not the Chapter 90 funding.
Okay.
Different fundings.
Okay.
That includes the school Chapter 70 funding and other items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no other comments. May I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. And the motion passes unanimously, and we adjourn for the day. Thank you all for your, it's been a long day for all of us.